Oh, we're hot, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to each of you. We appreciate your attendance. If you would stand, the Vice Mayor will have our invocation and lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Gracious God, we praise you and thank you for our city, our state, and our nation. We ask you to be with us and guide us in our decisions tonight. Bless our first responders, our military, and we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kerry. First item on our agenda tonight is some special presentation. We're going to have an audit presentation by Leslie and Danielle. I know you're here.
Come on up, Leslie. And for the members watching at home, we did include that our audit would be put online. Will be delayed. We'll have it up tomorrow for everybody to view, and then we'll have a copy in the library.
Well, hi, my name is Leslie Roberts. I'm with the accounting firm Brown Edwards, which is new. And this was a first-year audit for us, and I was telling some of the staff this really went better than most first-year audits ever go. And I know you guys have had some turnover, and as you'll hear me present, we've got some new GASBs, a new GASB that was pretty difficult to implement. And so we all kind of pulled together and collaborated and got everything done. Again, my name is Leslie Roberts. I'm a partner with Brown Edwards, and I'm also a citizen of Poquoson. And born and bred here, really. But I graduated from Poquoson High School. But anyway, to go over it, I'm just going to go over some high points of it. I know you guys have had a chance to look at it. Hopefully you have. And just want to point out some things. Overall, like I said, the audit went very well, especially for a first-year audit. We were able to come in here and do our work when we planned, and everybody was prepared for us, and they were available throughout the field work. On pages 1 through 4 is the independent auditor's report, and this is kind of the bottom line, where we're able to come in here as an independent third party and look at your financial records and say that they present fairly the financial positions and the activity for the year. And you've got another clean audit opinion, that's in the second paragraph right at the front. And so yes, we were able to come in here and look at your records and say that the balances and the activity presents fairly the activity of the city of Poquoson. Moving on, there's a section called Management's Discussion and Analysis. It's on goes from page 5 to 17. If you read nothing else of the audited financials, this is a good kind of high-level summary of how your financials are put together, some of your financial policies, and also it gives you some comparative information year over year, and some information, budgetary information as well. So that's really a good thing to focus on if you're going to look at it. It's very hard, I know, to read these financials. They're in a format that isn't that easy to read. So this part is very user-friendly. Moving on to the notes to the financials, to the basic financials, they go from pages 10 to page 30. And just a couple things, statement of net position is on page 10. And this is kind of like your balance sheet. You've got your assets, liabilities, and what's left over. In the case of the city, what's left over is pretty strong. You've got a net position of about $40.5 million, and that's broken down between net investment and capital assets, which is about 61% of your total. And then your unrestricted portion is about $13.7 million, about 34% of the total. So you can see that it's pretty healthy net result, or what's left over at the end, which is called net position for a governmental entity. Also on the basic financial statements, you can see that you were on page 11, which is the statement of activities. And this one is very hard to read because you've got your revenues in one column, expenses in the next column, and so forth. But if you look at the third line from the bottom, you can see that your change in net position was positive and that's what you want to see. And it was positive to the tune of almost 4.8 million, so that's good. Moving on, the notes to the financials cover a lot more, and you've got some notes and you've got some required supplemental disclosure. Not going to go into all of that, but if you move back toward the back of the financials, pages 126 and 127, there's another report based on our audit, and this is a report on financial reporting, internal control over financial reporting. If we had any issues that we thought were material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, they would be noted in this letter. We did not have any of those. If we had any issues of non-compliance, we do these additional procedures related to the state code compliance. If we found anything there, we would note that in this letter. We did not have any findings there. Moving on to yet another report that goes with our audited financials is on page 131 through 133, and this is on the federal money that you get in and the expenditures and the compliance requirements related to that. And basically, this is another clean report. If we had any findings related to that you've probably heard it referred to as a single audit before. Basically, we pick programs and we go in and we look at the compliance requirements that are material and direct to those programs, and we do additional test work. Some of it's financial, some of it is purely compliance. We did not have any findings as a result of that audit, so that's another clean opinion. So there's three kind of opinions in one rolled up into your audited financials, and that's that big bound document. And that's all I have on the audited financials. Do you have any questions? We do have that other document that's stapled that Danielle's going to go through.
Thank you, Leslie. We appreciate that. Any questions of Leslie? Must have done all right.
Well, Mayor, let me just add
Go
that
ahead.
this is, again, our first year with Brown Edwards. This is a collected effort, both with the city and schools, so I'd like to thank the schools as well for helping us get across the finish line, and we're excited for next year.
Okay, and I'm going to let Danielle talk a little bit about the required correspondence,
All right.
most of which is boilerplate.
So I'll just go briefly over the stapled document from us. The very front has the contact information for Leslie, myself, and Katie Babb, who was the manager on the engagement. So if anybody has any questions or follow-up comments you want to bring to us at a later date, feel free to reach out to us individually. We're always welcome for questions and to have further discussions on anything that you might want to talk about. The first page of the letter, as Leslie mentioned, there was a new GASB implementation that we kind of worked through this year. GASB 87 on leases, and as a result there is an extra little item here related to significant estimates that are embedded in your financial statements, and leases is kind of based a lot on management's estimates on how long these leases are going to last, which impacts the financial figures that are embedded in your financials. Otherwise, there were no changes in your estimates from last year, pension, OPEB, and your estimated lives of capital assets. We are pleased to report that we encounter no there are no difficulties or disagreements in dealing with management. It was a very pleasant, very collaborative process with both the city and the schools. And then there is a reference to Appendix B, which is the listing of journal entries that were posted as part of the audit process. Because we do assist in the preparation of your statements, there are quite a few entries listed in that appendix that are related to preparing your financials on a full accrual basis to get it to full accrual from your fund basis, which is what you're used to looking at on a regular throughout the year. So there are some journal entries in there that we posted, and also in Appendix C, there was one unrecorded adjustment. 1 week ago, the APA provided some guidance for the state opioid monies that have been coming through to localities, and it just wasn't enough time to get those in your financials. So we determined that it's not material, but it is an unrecorded revenue stream that will be there next year. So we just wanted to bring it to your attention that it's not embedded in your financials right now. And then also there's the third appendix, Appendix A, is the representation letter that's provided by management to us as part of the audit. And there's also a pretty lengthy section here about future GASB pronouncements if you're having trouble sleeping at night. Are there any questions on that document?
Questions of Danielle?
Okay, I just want to say,
All right.
Leslie and I both want to say thank you so much for being given the opportunity to work with Poquoson this year.
Thank you guys for what you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Let's move on. Our next item is a years of service employee recognitions. Ms. Tanya?
Yes, thank you. And we started this during the COVID, and we're going to continue through this every year. And this gives us an opportunity to reflect on those employees that have hit milestones. If we can get the PowerPoint pulled up. Mr. Canella has a few more years before we see his picture on here. We apologize for those who are sitting at home. We're just waiting for. Wait a minute there. Well, why don't we do?
Do we know who they are? If we.
Yeah, how about I'll just go ahead and read it. First of all, I'd like to thank, we'll replay this on live TV, on the TV as it scrolls through. But our first one is a 5-year. It's Harold Randy Cook. He's a firefighter medic from the fire department. He has 5 years of service. And interesting enough, when I was at the City of Newport News, I actually retired him out as a firefighter there. So it's great to see that he's now here at City of Poquoson. The next one is Carla Crockett. She's a sergeant for the police department. She has, again, had her 5-year milestone. Carla started off as an officer. She was promoted to a corporal, and just recently, as of last week, was promoted to a sergeant. So Thomas R. Diggs, he's a firefighter, EMT with the fire department. Again, he's another candidate that we've taken from Newport News, because I remember him there as well. Next is William Willis. He's a firefighter, goes by the name of Eric. We also have Jessica Burkhart. She's in our library. She does a lot for us there, and we appreciate everything she does for us for those programs. We'll skip this person. What do you think?
How'd you get on?
Next is me. Yeah, we'll skip. Next, we have Christy Snap. She's one of our assistant city manager. Let's see if I can catch back up. Goes
Backwards.
Here we go. Don't look, watch this. Here we go. Thomas, if you can get me started at the beginning, can you? Real quickly. So 5 years of world. So I'll kind of slowly go there. There's a picture of our Randy. There is our Sergeant Crockett. There is Thomas, or Tommy. There's Eric, another firefighter. There's who I was talking about, Jessica in the library. We'll skip her. That's me. There's Christy. She's with us here at the city manager's office. We have one of our city engineers. This is Garrett. He started with us 5 years as well. Been real pleased with the work that he's done here. We have Wally Horton, who as well started in 5 years in this date, so outstanding. Next year's our 10-year, and it looks like it's going on its own. We've got Scott Holloway. He's a mechanic in our garage. We have Hicks. He's another sergeant that was just promoted to the police department, promoted to sergeant in the police department. We got Anush Wiggins. She's a part-time in the libraries. We have Jerry Beans. He's in our public works. Our 15-year awards. We have Lisa Nichols in our DMV Select. We have Christopher Tantilla. He's a firefighter with the fire department. You have Captain Waddell. Our 20-year employees. We have Daryl Griffiths. He is a firefighter in our fire department. Lisa Turner, she's a detective with our police department. Sherry Coffey, a lot of us talk to her when you're calling in on permits. Chuck Downey, another firefighter. 25 years. We have Doug Montgomery. He's in our public works. He's the one that you see out there operating the boom trucks. Dwayne McFarland, another firefighter. He's actually a master firefighter. 30 years of service. You have John Ellis. He's in our fleet management, keeps our vehicle going on the road. We would like to congratulate all our employees in their dedication to the city. That's just a few that made these milestones. And again, each year we'll be presenting each milestone as we come forward. But thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Any comments regarding our honorees? Okay.
I think that's just great.
It is great.
Keep employees for that length of time. That says a lot about our management.
Does. All right, let's move on to audience for visitors. At this time, if there's anyone in our audience that'd like to address council, I say any issue, but if those of you that are here for the storage warehouse, we're gonna, if it's okay with you guys, we'll call you when we get to that public hearing, if that's all right, okay? All righty, other than that, we're ready to hear from anyone who wants to address council on any topic. All right, seeing none. Let's move on to the approval of minutes, our regular session, November 14th, 2022.
I move that we approve the minutes of our regular session of November 14th, 2022.
Okay.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made, second, we approve our minutes. Any concerns, comments, questions regarding those minutes? If not, Ms. Kim, please.
Councilman Southall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman,
Aye.
Councilman Hucks, Councilman Green,
Aye.
Councilman Fye,
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews,
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Move on to item F. We have 3 public hearings, the first of which is an ordinance making additional appropriations and transfers for fiscal year 2023 for general fund and capital project fund, Poquoson City Schools. Tanya?
Okay. Well, tonight I have an ordinance in front of you for appropriating additional funds to the school board. We have Artie Tillett, our superintendent, who's in the audience, as well as Tara Woodruff, if there's any question of council. But each year, when school board has funds left over they did not utilize during the year, they return the funds back to the city and ask for reappropriation at the consideration of city council. So tonight, we have provided to you the amounts in which they wish to appropriate. Since the dollar amount was higher than $500,000, that's why we see it on the public hearing, so we did have to advertise for tonight. But they're asking for a reappropriation of $433,471, a one-time bonus for all their current full-time and part-time employees, a reappropriation of $182,669 to provide interior and exterior security enhancement, provide monitors on the primary school bus runs, and install additional adaptive playground equipment at the primary and elementary school. They've requested $81,840 to provide funding to replace athletic equipment that has exceeded its useful life. And then they've requested $161,000 to be transferred to capital projects to make the completion of purchasing 2 buses. So in front of you tonight, you have an ordinance that we did. If you see in front of you, you have a corrected version where we've updated the proper dollar amount from September of last year, where we appropriated 110 and not 109. So tonight, council, I'm asking you to approve the ordinance reappropriating the funds as requested of the superintendent.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. Any questions of Tanya?
I just had one thing.
Go ahead.
When you talked about installing additional adaptive playground equipment, having been a playground safety inspector, I highly endorse adaptive equipment for the children that require it for our schools. I did an inspection of the school playgrounds, and that was probably the one thing I noticed, that's children that need assistance or other things that can enjoy it, like other children that maybe can roam freely. It's a good idea
Sure.
to have money there for the adaptive playground.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Any other comments? If not, we need a motion.
Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriation transfers and new appropriations for fiscal year 2023 for the general fund and capital projects.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe you opened the comment for public hearing.
Did not. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Forgive me for that. Let's back up. And let's open the public hearing and ask if there's, maybe Mr. Tillett wants to talk, I don't know. Open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone that would like to address this issue. Anyone that's opposed to this issue? I don't see any. Okay, let's start over, buddy, if you don't mind.
I do it all
Close the
again?
public hearing. We
Can I
close
do it
it.
all again?
That's my fault. I apologize.
We adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations and transfers, and new appropriations for fiscal year 2023, general fund and capital project fund.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt the ordinance. Any concerns or comments? You think Wayne's down there's not doing anything, just kind of sitting there, you know?
I'm awake.
I appreciate it. No, I appreciate it. Okay, we have a motion made and second, we adopt the ordinance. Ms. Kim?
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Fine.
Aye.
Councilman Cox.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Let's move on to our second public hearing, is a resolution to approve or deny a conditional use permit by Med Express Ambulance Service Incorporated, DBA Legacy EMS Incorporated, for the operation of a private ambulance service to be located at 538 With Creek Road, Zone B2 Business Commercial, and the tax map number is 18-159. Tanya?
All righty. I'm going to turn it over to our planner, Mr. Canella.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Glad to be back with you, and we'll be mindful of your time. So I will give you a fairly swift presentation. I'm sure you've all had a chance to read my staff memo, so I don't want to belabor any point. But if you have questions, I'm certainly happy to entertain those at the conclusion of the presentation. For your consideration first, Mr. Mayor, is a conditional use permit is mentioned for a private ambulance service to be located at 538 With Creek Road. The applicant is Med Express Ambulance Services Incorporated, doing business as Legacy EMS. The request for the conditional use permit, Mr. Mayor, is before you because private ambulance services are not permitted by right in our B2 district. The notice for tonight's public hearing was advertised in the Daily Press November 30th and December 7th, and adjacent letters were sent to necessary property owners on November 14th. About the use, and I quote the application, Mr. Mayor, is to operate an administrative office for a private ambulance service providing transports from Langley Air Force Base to their market area hospitals. We only provide inter-facility transports for Langley Air Force Base and are not for hire. This is the proposed site, Mr. Mayor, I'm sure you're all familiar with. 538 With Creek Road has housed a few different businesses over the years, but as the current office of Marquee Homes, as well as the business for your consideration. This is the aerial proposed site. I'm sure you all are familiar with the location. I've included the slides, Mr. Mayor, of permitted uses in the business district that you're all familiar with, but I thought it was important to include those in case you do have any questions. We can come back to it. And of course, the use is only permitted by conditional use permit. There are 7 recommended conditions, Mr. Mayor. The first is that at no time shall more than 2 ambulances be stored on site. The second is that no employee shall take quarters on site, nor sleeping accommodations be provided. The third is that all signage shall be subject to architectural review. The business is in the city's architectural control district. The fourth is that the use must comply with all local, state, and federal permits, licenses, and regulations If at any time the use is operating in violation of any of the regulations set forth by the aforementioned agencies, the city council may revoke the permit. The fifth condition is that if at any time the specified permitted use on the property is discontinued for a period of 2 or more years, this permit shall become null and void. The sixth is that the service shall remain non-emergency and shall only operate with contracted clients, and as such, there shall be no use of lights, sirens, etc. And the seventh is that city council reserves the right to review and amend the conditions of the permit as they see fit. Staff recommends approval, Mr. Mayor, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you or members of council may have.
Hey, Thomas, well done. Any questions of Thomas? We talked about this a few weeks ago, anticipation of the conditional use permit. Any other questions, concerns? All right, Thomas, thank you. Good job. Okay, let's open the public hearing then and ask if there's anyone in our audience that would like to address this. Okay, seeing none, close the public hearing and ask for a motion from council.
Operation of a private ambulance service to be located at 538 With Creek Road, Zone B2, Commercial, Tax Map Parcel 18-1-59.
Okay, thank you, buddy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Keith. All right, we have motions made and seconded. We adopt the resolution. Are there concerns or are there comments from anybody? Okay. If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Hucks.
Aye.
Councilman Fye.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman. Mayor Hessel.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Let's move on to public hearing number 3. It's a resolution to approve or deny a conditional use permit by Graham Real Estate LLC for the operation of a mini storage warehouse to be located at tax map parcels 18-1-103 and 18-1-104 on With Creek Road, Zone B2, Business Commercial. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The request is exactly what you just read. The applicant is Graham Real Estate LLC, and the code considerations for this matter, Mr. Mayor, is that many storage facilities are not permitted by right in the B2 district and can only operate upon the issuance of a conditional use permit. Legal notice, this was advertised in the Daily Press November 30th and December 7th, and adjacent letters were sent to necessary property owners on November 14th. About the use, and quoting the application, Mr. Mayor, the applicant desires to construct an interior climate-controlled self-storage facility on the property. The applicant desires for the use to be an attractive addition to the corridor in terms of both architecture and landscaping, which will be compatible with the surrounding uses of low traffic generating. A little bit of information, Mr. Mayor. Approximately 540 units presented for the use and to be staffed by a full-time manager and part-time or full-time assistant manager. Proposed site, Mr. Mayor, is tax map parcels 18 TAC 1, TAC 103, and 18 TAC 1, TAC 104. It's two vacant parcels that comprise one large one that lie between the post office and the Moore Building, and it is Zone B2, Business Commercial. The same slides you saw in the last presentation, Mr. Mayor, the permitted uses in the B2 district. Happy to come back to this at your request. And of course, use is permitted only by conditional use permit. The 15th, which you can see on the screen, is many storage warehouses, and because of that, this is before you for consideration. I want to show you some elevations provided to us by the applicant, and I want to note that these were done with the, I'll say, advice and conditions and approval of the Architectural Review Board. This is the left elevation of the building, the right elevation of the proposed building. This is the front elevation with material description. I won't get into the intricate parts of the materials unless you prefer I do, but I do want to note that Today, I received new elevations from the applicant. This is not one of them, but I did it on purpose. The new elevations, Mr. Mayor, show that self-storage sign on the right side of the building. Well, it doesn't show it. They've removed that from their proposal, and this is the most current elevation with that removed. Mr. Mayor, I included a conceptual site plan in tonight's presentation. Happy to answer questions about that should you have any. This is an illustrative concept plan. And Mr. Mayor, I thought in an effort to try and paint the picture for you of the size of this building, I would include some building size comparisons. And the first one I used conveniently was the building we're all sitting and standing in. And that City Hall is pretty similar, actually, to the proposed warehouse. And I'll read my note. The proposed My Storage building is 280 feet wide and 125 feet deep on the side nearest the post office. It is also proposed with an approximate 30,000 square foot footprint, and also for comparison, City Hall has a footprint of approximately 25,000 square feet. And you can see the width of City Hall is 282 feet, and the depth at its deepest at the library is 125. I'll get to footprint comparisons in just a second, Mr. Mayor. This, you can see, is an approximate footprint of the proposed building overlaid onto the aerial of City Hall to try and give you an idea of the size of the proposed building. Then I wanted to take a building, Mr. Mayor, that was obviously smaller than that proposed, and it's the building, the Parish Thrift Shop building, Mr. C's and Bull Island Motor Company. You can see it's about the same depth, 123 feet compared to 125, but it is smaller in width at 220 feet. I did the same with the footprint, Mr. Mayor, and you can see the footprint of the proposed building overlaid onto the aerial of the Parish Thrift Shop facility. The third, Mr. Mayor, I chose a building that was larger for comparison size, of course. This is the Food Lion Shopping Center. It's 180 feet deep. The side you see when going down Victory Boulevard, it's 338 feet in width. And again, this is the footprint of the proposed building overlaid into the aerial of the Food Lion Shopping Center. The building height, Mr. Mayor, I've tried to do the same thing, and I'm going to read my note. The applicant has expressed that the building will not be greater than 35 feet in height as prescribed by city code. As you can see, the building has a fairly flat roof, but there is a small peak. The height will be measured to the midpoint of the ridge line in the peak, which does not appear as a significant height difference. That's how we measure height for all buildings in the city. Here's a height example, building we're all familiar with, Poquoson Fire and Rescue Station 2. And from the grade to the peak of the engine bay is 36 feet. One more, Mr. Mayor, Poquoson Diner, from the grade to the peak, building I'm too familiar with, is 24 feet. And this is an important one, Mr. Mayor. This is a height comparison with the Southtown Villas. And if you look at the picture on the left, that is the proposed property. And you can see the rear of the home and two adjacent homes that I've shown on the right. Those are 3-story townhouses, and they are approximately 36 feet at the peak. This is an adjacent building, the Moore building we're all familiar with, and at its peak is approximately 26 feet. I did have an opportunity to observe it with our building inspector, Mr. David Forrest, who is well-versed in the field, much more so than I, so I appreciate his assistance. But then I had an opportunity to speak with one of the owners of the building who thought that the peak of the Moore building was about 26 feet. There are 8 conditions recommended for you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The first is a repeat that the use must comply with all local, state, and federal permits, licenses, and regulations. Second, if at any time the specified permitted use on the property is discontinued for a period of 2 or more years, the permit shall become null and void. The third is that the city council reserves the right to review and amend the conditions of the permit as they see fit. This is an important one, Mr. Mayor. The fourth is that the site shall be developed in substantial conformance as determined by staff as it is approved by the city council. Any major deviation from the proposed site plan as determined by staff would require the approval of city council. Additionally, any major deviation from the proposed elevations as determined by staff would require the approval of the Architectural Review Board. The fifth condition is that all loading and unloading shall take place on site and at no time shall be permitted on Wythe Creek Road or in a manner which restricts the access of the sidewalk. The sixth is that no outside storage shall be permitted. The seventh is that except for purposes of loading and unloading, there shall be no parking or storage of trucks, trailers, and moving vans with the exception of one company-owned vehicle to be used only by customers who rent space in the building. And the eighth, Mr. Mayor, is that as part of the applicant's site plan approval, all stormwater maintenance facilities shall be fenced and shall only be accessible for maintenance and landscaping services. Mr. Mayor, these are the 8 conditions staff recommends approval with. Planning Commission voted to recommend denial by a vote of 4-0, and I am certainly happy to answer any questions you or any other member of council may have.
All right, Thomas, thank you. That's a great presentation, by the way. Any questions, Thomas Keith?
Yep, matter of fact, I got some questions.
Sure.
We talked about them a little bit this afternoon, but I'd like to go over them again. We're talking about 540 units, mostly 5 and 10-foot units, I heard at the Planning Commission meeting, and they'll all be climate controlled, which is a good thing. The artist renderings I got before, and even the ones here now, it had a little bit out of context, and the one shows a picture from up above, which no one would ever see. So I'm glad to see you had other views, and I appreciate all the work you did in getting the renderings into the comparisons. It really does help. I guess the first question is there a large demand for storage facilities in Poquoson?
I'm certainly not a market analyst, Councilman Fye, but I can tell you it's the position of staff that anticipating, I'll say, a significant increase in single-family homes in the next 3 or 4 years. There certainly seems to be a demand for it.
I can kind of answer the question. I stopped by Storage World, who's just down the street a little bit, and checked with them and asked them how they're doing. They're pretty much full up, and he talked about, and you may already know, that trying to expand their footprint as well. So it's something you may hear about if you haven't already heard about it. So that gave me a feeling that, yeah, there is a need. I don't know where other customers come from, but I assume a fairly good number from Poquoson. Then I ask you this question, I don't know if you had a chance to look at, do the other 2 storage warehouses in Poquoson exist under conditional use permit? I think you said part of one is?
They do, yes, sir. I had a chance to look at it after I spoke with you today.
Okay.
The one at 363 Hunts Neck, the one behind Poquoson Automotive, has had 3, an original conditional use permit approval and 2 modifications, one in 1991 and one in 1995, both of those to expand. The other at 360 Wythe Creek Road, Storage World, was approved originally by conditional use permit in February of 2003, and an additional conditional use permit to expand in January of 2006.
Okay. One thing I'm hoping, I apologize for being the new guy on the block. Do you have any idea how long this conditional use permit would be for? Because I was reading that in our own things here, it can be for an indefinite period of time, or it can be for a specific period of time. Is that part of this at all? Because I didn't see it in the written.
No, sir. By virtue of the second condition that if the use is discontinued for a period of 2 or more years, the permit shall become null and void, but with your approval tonight, it'll be active as long as the use is continued.
That was kind of lead into my next question. What happens if it becomes null and void? I mean, we got a pretty good sized building there that has but one purpose, and for some reason it becomes null and void. owner stuck with it, or we're stuck with, I know we're stuck with it, if something happened to it.
Well, it's definitely a free market and private property question, I can tell you, sir. But I can't imagine that the applicant is bringing this to you tonight for your consideration and any mindset that this use won't be there and viable for a long time.
Okay. One of the other things I saw in the conditional use permit in our ordinance is that we talk about why we would approve a conditional use permit. You talk about the city may attach such conditions and safeguards as are deemed necessary to protect the general public interest or the character of the neighborhood. All that, read that, put that in the back of my mind. I have some other questions I don't know if you can answer, maybe from the person that's asking for this is, again, I thank for the updated renderings from those I saw at the Planning Commission meeting and the Board of Zoning Appeals. That was very educational there. The conceptual site plan indicates a possible second entrance or exit. Is that probably going to happen or not? Because it talk about, you can see it there to the north on the right side. Is that a possibility, or is that given up on, or?
I think, Councilman Fye, it's certainly possible, but I think that'll be determined at the time of site plan review with our engineering staff and the applicants.
Okay. As I was talking to you this afternoon, I've got a lot of travel in the last 3 weeks since Thanksgiving and seen up and down highways like Highway 17 in Gloucester County and York County, then down in the Virginia Beach area on Farrell Parkway and Indian River Road, and seen some of these facilities. And my question is this basically an optimum size for a storage warehouse of this type?
As far as I know, Councilman Fye, the nature of them being transitioning to warehouse facilities, I would say is comparable to others we see in the region.
Like is 3 floors, which we're talking about here, optimum, or is 2 floors viable?
I think that viability, and I think that's a better question for the applicant.
Is he here, she here?
They are here, sir.
Did they answer that question?
They're going to be speaking in just a few minutes, Keith.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, and let's see. The only comments I had for that were already pretty much taken care of in the call we had, hadn't to do with the sign, so I do appreciate that. That's all I have, sir.
Okay. Any other questions at Thomas?
I have a couple of questions. So I know whenever we take up green space, everybody's concerned is flooding. The last condition about stormwater maintenance facilities.
Right.
What is the plan for that? Do you know?
Again, that's included because one could certainly assume there will be stormwater maintenance facilities on site, and that's a condition I'll say borrowed from conditional use permits in the past where there are stormwater maintenance facilities. We conditioned that they're fenced for obvious safety reasons, but the extent of the stormwater maintenance facilities, of course, will be determined again during site plan review by our engineering staff.
But that will be something that the city is making sure that.
Absolutely.
Everything is taken care of so that it don't affect neighboring.
That's part of our site plan process and will be taken care of.
Okay, and how many feet is there, do you know, between the sides and the adjacent structures? Do you know?
That may be a little hard to see, but the applicant has proposed a 10-foot landscape buffer on the edges of the property, and I would approximate that the corner on the side nearest the post office, the corner of the building, and this is certainly the applicant can clarify if I misspeak, but I would tell you is at least 10, probably closer to 15 feet, and on the left side at the nearest, probably closer to about 20 feet.
And I just also wanted to clarify, their conditional use permit that they're asking for is for use only. Right?
That's correct.
The use of a storage facility, the height of the building, the setbacks on the front, the side, the height, everything that it's laid out doesn't require a conditional use permit. That is permitted the way it is by right.
The use is not permitted by right. The setbacks and yard regulations are prescribed by city code for the district. So that's the applicable city code and what we'll use during this development process.
I just wanted to clarify that that everything about the building is allowed in our ordinance, other than the
As
storage
presented.
facility.
Yes, ma'am. If this was a by right use as presented, the same size, same setback, same height, it is in an approvable form.
Would you mind going back to the list of uses that are allowed there?
Sure.
For example, 7, it says medical care facilities including hospitals and trauma centers. So if somebody wanted to come in and build the exact same size building, and it was a medical or trauma center, it would be by right, and it would not require a conditional use permit.
The use would be permitted by right, and as presented, if it was the same size of the building, I'll note, as presented, it would be permitted by right and wouldn't require a variance.
That's just what, so if somebody else came in with the exact same building, exactly that way, but with one of those uses, it wouldn't even come before us, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, other questions of Thomas?
Yes, Gordon.
Go ahead.
We've all seen some proposals for construction in the city, and they present site plan elevations that look one way, but when they get built, they not look like the site plans that were presented, okay? And I was going to suggest that it'd be a requirement that it look much like the elevations that are presented, okay? And my impression of the conditions that you have listed is that it is going to look much as presented.
Yes, sir.
And it's also my understanding that, again, reflecting on Jana's comments, that were that to be a food facility or another by right use, they could build a building that size or even larger without any requirement coming before city council?
That is also true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, Thomas, thank you. All right, let's open the public hearing, and I'll take these speakers in order as I got them. So the first speaker is Mr. Moffitt. Ms. Moffitt, I apologize. Thank you for the email, by the way.
Yeah, thank you guys. I got some responses from some of you. So, good evening, council members. I did send an email to everyone here regarding the storage warehouse conditional use request that we're discussing tonight, and I respectfully advocate that this be denied. As someone who was born in a small town, much like Poquoson, I was raised to appreciate what small towns have to offer to its citizens. Such things as safety, close-knit community, walkability, and general aesthetics, among a few. Because of these things and more, my family decided to lay down our roots in Poquoson, thus making it our place for the last 25 years. Buildings such as the storage warehouse would have been a deterrent as we looked for similar aesthetics to the ones we had left behind in another state. I wholeheartedly believe our town has so much potential, and this just doesn't align with the vision I believe Poquoson is trying to achieve. I'm not opposed to a storage unit, but just not in this location. This is an area heavily traveled by pedestrians on foot and children on bicycles. It would also take away from the general aesthetics of the old brick buildings and become a general eyesore for the community. I also understand that this is not a by right use lot for a storage facility, and because of this, I ask that you all reconsider approving the request for the conditional use permit. While it may fit within guidelines, I am hopeful that you all can agree that it doesn't fit within our community's guidelines for aesthetics and small town charm. A large storage warehouse on this section of Wythe Creek would be out of character for our main city street. When we tell friends and family and neighboring cities that Poquoson is the place, let's ensure that it's the place that we want to live, shop, and gather. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moffitt. Okay, Lindsay Watson. Had an email from you as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So good evening. My name is Lindsay Watson, and I am on your Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, as well as a previous interviewee for a prior city council position. I'm also the club treasurer for the Kiwanis Club of Poquoson, just sharing all that to say how much I love this town. I also served on the CPT, the Community Participation Team, who was charged with collating community feedback a few years ago when the comprehensive plan was last seeking feedback for updates. Thank you all for your time tonight. I also appreciate Councilman Hux's time yesterday, who offered to speak with me before this meeting to walk me through some of the process and context, and to Councilman Fye, who encouraged me to come speak tonight. It's a testament to the process that we all can converse. I just want to say thank you. So to start, and for absolute clarity, I'm not opposed to a storage unit, even on that parcel. I recognize and agree that business revenue is critical to fund a great many things. And while I realize this is not a by right use lot, I support the landowner's rights to sell to a company who oversees storage warehouses. My challenge to you is in the refinement of the proposal. I realize this proposal was recommended to be approved by the Architectural Review Board and recommended to be denied by the Planning Commission. And you, esteemed council, you have the ultimate say. And I say it's not about what fits in the box. It's about intentional planning of what kind of place we want to live in. You have a commission dedicated to intentional planning, and it has given you feedback. Is our place to be characterized by overlarge concrete boxes that, sure, are ever so slightly softened by a small handful of trees? I challenge you to require more, even if that's just a continuance to exercise your right to require just a little bit more in the way of design, because maybe this permanent structure is on our main drag and there's no way of not seeing it. I'm also asking you to consider formalizing stricter requirements on beautification elements for future developers. I'm asking you to do what so many other beautiful small towns are doing, require new buildings to cater to the character of Poquoson so that Poquoson can continue to be the place we keep advertising. If, for example, Sedona can demand McDonald's to paint their famous arches blue, surely we can partner with a local developer to ensure maybe trees are planted a little bit taller, perhaps orient the building so that the front facade is not so out of scale with the surrounding quaint brick buildings. As I went back to familiarize myself with the comprehensive plan, a few excerpts resonated with me. Permit a new development only where such developments are compatible with the character of adjoining uses or where the impacts of such new developments can be adequately addressed. Particular attention should be given to addressing impacts as incompatible development intensity, building height and scale, land uses, etc. Also, provide landscaped areas and trees along public roads and property lines, and develop sites in a manner that retains and enhances the natural wooded character of the city. Also, preserve the unique small-town atmosphere of Poquoson and protect it from the garish clutter found in some commercial districts in neighboring jurisdictions. All that said, the comprehensive plan is our ticket to future success in retaining that small-town feeling. Try to imagine a company that doesn't have a business plan. So I reiterate again, I'm not personally opposed to a storage warehouse, not even on this plot, even though this is not a by right land zoning. I am, however, an advocate for the beauty of this small town, and I love it. I know that you have the power that's vested within our comprehensive plan to ensure that the quaint small town culture remains the prime focal point. So I thank you for your careful consideration of this very permanent and very public place in our city, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Libby?
Hi, I'm Libby Griebel. I live at 46 Shoreline Drive. I am an adjoining property owner to this project. I've sent each of you an email.
Libby, excuse me, will you pull that microphone down?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Is that
Maybe it's
better?
just me that I'm not hearing very well.
We've got to play more, we'll give it a second.
Oh.
Give us a second.
All right.
I think it's okay, Olivia.
Do I need to repeat where I,
Don't need to repeat
my
my name.
name or anything? Okay, I'm going to try to hold this briefly. I am in opposition of this project. Not the use. I'm not opposed to the use of the project as a storage facility. What I am opposed to is the height and the width of this particular unit, 280 feet, a 90,000 square foot building with 540 units, 35 feet high. And if you look at the parking area in front of it, I think I counted 15 spaces. Now, that may not be correct, and so you correct me if I'm wrong, Thomas. But the parking in front of that, if you look at that rendition, if you could pull that up a minute, is extremely small for a building of that size. I know that we have looked at the building by right would be acceptable, but the use is not acceptable. And what I think a lot of folks are missing is that I know that when our property was developed, which included the thrift store now and Mr. C's, at the time that that was developed, because of the type of building that it was, it required a parking space for every square footage in those buildings, both first and second floor, even though the second floor was not ever finished and has never been finished in all these years, which has probably been, I don't know, 30 years now. So even though a building by right can fit that box, so to speak, the parking requirements for a building of that size and use change. Is that not correct, Thomas? I read the article, I read through a lot of the zoning ordinance today that can require up to, I think it's 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. But the point I want to make is that you would get the impression that this building would be allowable if it wasn't for the use. But that's not necessarily the case because the parking requirements would be very different based on the by right building in that particular property. So I would ask that the council take a look at that. Again, we're not opposed to the use. If it was something more pleasing, not so massive, not so long, I would like to just say that I do have some photographs that I would like to pass out to the council, if I may.
Sure.
Just to give you an example of some buildings of this size and how they look. And I just don't think that's Poquoson. And I don't think the citizens of Poquoson want to see that. And because this requires a conditional use permit, I think it is within your purview to deny this, as did the Planning Commission, because I do think that we have a responsibility to the citizens of Poquoson and our comprehensive plan that you have all passed, that it went through the Planning Commission, it's gone through the council, just as our previous speaker I've got highlights from the comprehensive plan, and it's so out of touch and out of tune with what we've passed as for the comprehensive plan. So I would ask each of you just to take a look at this. Just to give you an idea.
Just give those to Kim, all of them, and she can,
I think it's 7 there. I'm still not.
thank you.
But I just wanted to give everyone just a visual, and as our previous speaker said, people walk that sidewalk. Everybody was on that sidewalk during the Christmas parade. It's a walk. I mean, when you drive through a small town city, you see what we are seeing what you would expect to see. We're not expecting to see a commercial building that's 35 feet high and 280 feet long. We're not expecting to see that in a small town city. So I give you that. The first pictures that you're looking at is on Todd Center. Let me see. The first one that you're looking at, I believe, I don't have my sheet.
Living.
It's Todd City.
All right, the first one is Todd's Lane.
this building that you're looking at right here is right up against the highway. It's a e-commerce building. It is in the shopping, it's actually on the corner of the shopping center. It's approximately 40 feet high. It's 62 feet wide. It's 384 feet along Aberdeen Road. And if you have ever been over there, you've seen that building because you can't miss that building. And when you look at that, it's like, oh my gosh, what in the world is that building? And so I wanted you to, that is the Todd Lane view that you're looking at. And the second one is just another looking down the sidewalk where I'd actually pulled into the parking lot. The next building that you'll see is a storage unit very similar to what is being proposed here today. This is on Cunningham Drive. It's similar in style and design. It's a 220, this is 225 feet wide, and we're talking about 280 feet, I believe, is the dimension that's being proposed. That's a pretty massive building. That picture is taken more as a close-up, and if you look to the last picture, that's taken up just as I turned into the parking lot off of Mercury Boulevard, where the Olive Garden is, right to the left of the Olive Garden. There's a new car wash out in front of it. But this sits back off the highway. And so it's not obtrusive looking as you're driving down Mercury Boulevard. And I think a building of this magnitude is not this is just to give you a visual. I just don't believe that it represents our small town atmosphere that we have worked so hard to preserve. And for a council to vote something like this, I can't understand it. Because I think we all want to preserve what we have here. Are we gonna make it like any other city that's around us? Poquoson would be no different than any other city that we've seen these kinds of buildings fronting the main highways. And so I would ask that respectfully that the council deny that. I have done some additional digging into this property because I haven't been a native. I've been here a long time, been familiar with it, and of course my father developed the property beside it. And I know that there was an issue with this property for a long time. That's one of the reasons it's never been developed. I pulled an old plat that shows a 15-foot drainage. It says it's a 15-foot drainage, utility, ingress and egress easement, and a 15-foot sanitary easement that runs down this property. And if you look at this property, it would appear to me, and I'm not an engineer, but based on what was presented at the Planning Commission, and I don't see that particular one here, there's a strip between this property and the Poquoson, the post office. And that strip is about it's 18.85 feet actually, a strip. And then there's a vacant strip, and then there's a 15-foot easement. So I would like to pass that out to everybody for you to take a look at that so that you can see that this was never brought to our attention, you know, it was never brought to the Planning Commission's attention, this particular issue and how it's going to be addressed as well, because it would appear that this building is sitting on top of this easement. So I would like to pass that out as well. And I also have a copy I would like to pass out as well. And this is actually the post office, what you're looking at right now. This is the second set. What you're seeing right now is a plat of the property of Joseph and Salvatore Russo. And if you look at the right-hand side, the property line that adjoins the post office, the way I read this plat, there is a space of about what would appear to be around 20 feet. And then you see this ingress and egress and sewer easement that's drawn in there. And it would appear that the building itself actually would lay on top of that easement. I have another plat that was just handed out to you, which is the piece that Coyotes, this is the strip that Coyotes had deeded to the Frall developers. This is the piece that you were showing on the, if you look, there's a strip in red that y'all had that was presented to, that strip in red at the top is actually owned by, well, it's been sold down to APFI, whoever they may be, APIF. But if you look at that, this plat is dated in 98. The one you're looking at, the first one I gave you, is plat is in 2004. This one is 1998, and it also shows that strip that we're talking about, and it also shows this easement for right-of-way of ingress and egress. And I would ask the council to please postpone your vote on this project tonight, and let's do a little bit more research, dig a little bit more into it. I think that the city of Poquoson citizens would appreciate the fact that the council has taken into consideration all of the issues that have been posed tonight and give it an opportunity to circulate, because I can tell you, if I sincerely in my heart of hearts believe that most people really don't know what's going on with this project, this proposal, and that if they did know, there would be a serious outcry. So I am asking council to let's see how the citizens of Poquoson react to this meeting tonight. The Planning Commission denied it unanimously. It's on record. I've watched it twice today. Anybody can go in and watch it. Anybody that's watching the council meeting tonight will know that they can come back in and watch this. And I think that we owe it to the citizens to see what the citizens think too. And I just would like to say at the end that I am not opposed to progress. And I am a firm believer in an individual right to develop their property. But I do think that we have an obligation to have citizenry when we're doing a conditional use permit, that we owe it to our citizens to use good judgment and the judgment that we have all exhibited previously in the comprehensive plan. I think that's all I got to say. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I would respectfully ask that y'all postpone voting on this tonight. Thank you.
Hey, Libby, thank you. Joseph Russo.
That's a good one to follow. I'm Joseph Russo, 1 Harvest Landing Drive, Poquoson. I'm sure everyone knows we have the Anna's Pizza here in Poquoson. We've been longtime residents also. We've been paying taxes for a long time, and we try to support the community with everything that's asked of us. And we've been trying to sell this piece of property for quite a few years now. And these gentlemen have come up, one of the first ones to come up and have interest in it. And I was concerned about how something like that would look and everything, but everything I've seen and what they've promised, it's going to be a beautiful building. You know, Miss Libby might not like it, and I'm sorry for that, and there might be some citizens that don't, but when you pay taxes over years and years, and I'm getting to the age now that there's health issues going on, and I can't wait another 10 years. I recommend, and first of all, I forgot to say, I appreciate all y'all here tonight, and you guys do a wonderful job. But I would like to get this sold and approve this project, and it's a needed thing. It's going to add plenty of tax revenue to the city, where us citizens won't have to pay as much. Maybe it could hold it off a couple of years, real estate taxes or other taxes. But this is a need in this community. It's climate controlled. We can store plenty of things in there that won't get ruined in these non-climate controlled units. And I'm sure that they will do what they can to make sure it pleases everybody. And I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions for me, or I'm sure they'll be standing up in a minute, you can ask them. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo. Tim Grant.
very seldom am I taller than the speakers that precede me. Mr. Mayor, members of council, counselor, Madam Clerk, Madam Assistant Manager, it's my privilege to be here tonight on behalf of the applicant. My name is Tim Trant. I'm an attorney with Kaufman and Knowles, also resident of the city, 837 Poquoson Avenue. Just to introduce the team tonight, in case I don't know the answers and need to refer questions to other people, is Whitney Graham, who is the owner of Graham Real Estate, native of Hampton Roads, and develops his projects here in Hampton Roads. His contractor, Matt Husson, who's with Elevate Contractors, the owner of Elevate Contractors, also a native of Poquoson. Bob Thornton and Antonio Tedesco are the real estate professionals working on the transaction. And last but certainly not least, Sal Russo, who's sitting beside his younger brother, I was told, Joe. In any event, if you need to answer questions answered that I can't, those are folks that we may refer to. First and foremost, I want to thank staff, Thomas in particular, as well as Wally. They're very rigorous in their review of the application, but very kind, very respectful, very efficient, very persistent communication and communicating with us about the things they wanted, things they needed, timelines, conditions, all that sort of thing. It was very professional, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with them and how they handled us in the process. I know we saw the list of conditions there, and sometimes there can be some push and pull on that. We are in complete agreement with the conditions that are proposed, and appreciate the opportunity to work through those with staff. I will not be redundant of Thomas's presentation. He stole a lot of my thunder, but in the interest of time, I'll just highlight a couple of things supplemental to that. First and foremost is the plan that is before you, and maybe take one issue with the presentation, does differ from the ordinance requirements in one very meaningful way, and that is the landscaping. It exceeds ordinance requirements. And, it's in jest, but we certainly heard the concerns of the Planning Commission and Ms. Grable, being one of the planning commissioners, about the mass of the building and wanting, being concerned about the character of the corridor. And beauty's in the eye of the beholder. As a resident that drives that corridor every day, I think it's going to be one of the more attractive, if we were fortunate enough to get approval, one of the more attractive buildings in the With Creek corridor, but that's just my personal opinion. But we definitely heard the concern of aesthetics and the massing of that building, and fundamentally enhanced beyond ordinance standards our landscaping proposed in front of the building in multiple layers, alternating trees and shrubs, and along the sides of the building. That's all new and supplemental and more than the base ordinance requirements to break up the mass of that building and further enhance the aesthetics of the experience of the person that would drive by, the citizen that would drive by it on With Creek Road. And then last but not least, Mr. Cannella had raised with us some concerns about the signage, and particularly the self-storage component just being red and loud and supplemental, and asked whether, as did council members, whether how important that was. I took that back to Mr. Graham, and in a very snap decision said, look, we'll take it off, we'll get rid of it, and had his architect jump through his hat to produce new elevations for you all this evening to remove that signage to help, again, further and be responsive to the city's interest and improve the aesthetics. So I won't babble on anymore, but just stop there and answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, Gary, go ahead. Tim, can you talk about the parking and easement that Ms. Levy brought up?
Sure. I have not done the title review. I would respectfully submit those are private property rights issues that resolve between developers and property owners all the time, and I wouldn't see those as being part of the conditional use permit process, but to the extent that it's of interest to council, I did ask Mr. Graham about that. He has reviewed the title very carefully. He does a lot of this development very carefully, and is confident that those easements do not impact the placement of the building and are located on adjacent property. If they are located on his property, it doesn't impact the building footprint. And if he has to make any adjustments to that footprint to accommodate those, he's certainly prepared to do it. But he's confident from his perspective in his review of the title that they don't impact his proposal.
He also had brought up a parking requirement. Do you or maybe one of your group are able to address that?
Sure. So the parking spaces that are shown on this plan, I believe, meet or exceed the specifications for parking for this use under the city's ordinance. And Ms. Grable is right. Different uses have different parking requirements. You know, a fast food restaurant, for example, will have more parking needs on a hour by hour, day by day basis than something like a self-storage facility where people tend to come one time, drop their stuff off, and they don't come back very often. At least if Mr. Graham's business plan works, they keep their stuff there for a long time. I'm teasing, but the short answer is we are happy with the parking that's shown, but by industry standards, it's overparked. There is more parking on this site than is needed based on the experience of Mr. Graham and his operation of other similar facilities.
That's a question that I started to ask Thomas about. Is this the optimum size? Like if you had to develop a storage facility with climate control, would this be it? Or would it be bigger, smaller, higher? What would be the optimum? You're kind of sandwiched into this space you have, but if space was not a consideration, would this be the same building that would be built?
Sure. So I was talking with Mr. Graham about in anticipation, because you gave me a heads up that you might ask this question when you were speaking during the public, during the board or council review session. So there's not necessarily an optimum building size, sort of universally applicable to every market. It's really different market to market. So what Mr. Graham attempts to do without divulging all his proprietary secrets is, look at what the demand for storage is, and they have ways of predicting that. A lot of people in transition, so proximity to military bases, new housing, demographic data, younger families, that type of thing, all drives in their business model the demand for storage, and they can come up with a rough estimate of the market demand by number of square feet of available storage in a market area by resident or by person. And the market standard in Hampton Roads is really around 13 square feet per person, and our estimates are the market is substantially below that in the Poquoson area, like 3 to 4 square feet per person. So you want to program your building to try to address that market area, that market demand. You don't want it to be, you don't want to size it to assume all of the market demand, right? Because then you may overbuild, and that's a bad thing. There may be other market forces that will affect that. For example, existing facilities with expansion rights or seeking to expand. So you don't want to just run out the existing storage facilities either. So what I'm explaining to you, sorry, in a roundabout way, I should be more succinct, is it's not an A plus B, but it's a multivariable equation to sort of arrive at how you size these buildings. And yes, you are constrained, as you say, by the property that's available and what the ordinances will allow. So this is on the smaller scale of storage facilities. It's not abnormally small, but in a range of new climate-controlled storage facilities, you would typically see something in excess of 100,000 square feet, slightly larger. But for Poquoson, the scale of Poquoson and the market area, we feel that this is the optimum size for a new climate-controlled self-storage facility in this market.
I don't want to give you the answer, but I was just wondering if there was more benefits to be like 3 stories versus 2 because of HVAC considerations, consider these are climate controlled. If if we were to say, no, you can have a two-story one, pack your bags and leave town, or you go, wait,
No, fair question. And I'm sorry, so asking, what, if the question were, and I'm not saying this is what you're asking, what is the smallest building that you would be willing to do? It's not much smaller than what's proposed. It would be financially feasible to pay fair value for the land, build the building, and have a good operating model with material small space. A two-story building would not be financially feasible for Mr. Graham. We would not proceed with the project. It would need to have that additional square footage in order to make it a financially viable project.
I appreciate your addressing the signage thing, because that was my question was the fact that having seen buildings like the ones that are in these photographs here, and having driven through York County and Gloucester County and down to Virginia Beach on very, very wide roads, 5 lanes in each direction, at 55 mile an hour or so, that you almost need something up high and you'll see it. But With Creek Road is not that. It's 2 lanes in each direction, in the middle at 35 mile an hour, hopefully. And, people are, my feeling is if someone was looking for storage facility, I asked my wife, what would you do? She goes, well, I go on the internet. Exactly. Find where the storage facility is. How would you get there? GPS. So you really don't need that sign at the top of the building glaring down on you. And you moved it down a little bit, made it a little smaller, and got rid of the one. So thank you.
You should thank Mr. Canella. He did not give you away.
Okay. And all the doors and windows are basically on the front with some of the sides, so there's nothing facing out the back, not for, future development in the city, or people aren't.
And there may be, some code requirements for emergency egress, but no, there's no functional areas of the building out the back.
Yeah? Excuse me, Mr. Trent. I really appreciate the fact that the company is willing to, the conditions set forth, so forth, and that you've made a building that looks nice, okay? And you've agreed to the fact that it's going to look as presented in the elevations, okay? I also appreciate the fact that you added the green spaces that you did so that it doesn't look like some of the pictures that Ms. Grable presented, okay? And I was going to ask a question about the parking, but that's already been answered, okay? And I thought I heard her say that the building was going to set on an existing easement that wasn't necessarily set for the purpose of the building. Is it going to be setting on somebody's easement that was for another purpose?
We do not believe so, Mr. Southall. I have not personally reviewed the title, but Mr. Graham has, and he assured me that it is his belief that that easement does not impact the placement of our building.
Okay. Thomas, can you talk to that?
Councilman Southall, yeah, I think the applicant, is right in saying that, generally that would be found in a private title search, and if there was cause for concern, we'd more than likely hear it from them first. So that being the case, I think the applicant, what he reflected is accurate.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify that because I was going to ask Thomas too. So there would be something that would prevent him from building on an easement if indeed it did exist.
If a plan came to us that for the building on top of an easement that someone else has access to, it wouldn't fly through our process.
Right.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, Ms. Andrews and Mr. Southall, we wouldn't get a lender to loan money to build the building if there were title issues. The adjacent property owner would have a right to sue us. We wouldn't proceed to build a building that couldn't, that somebody could force us to tear down or relocate or claim damages. So, but we don't think that's likely to be the case. But if it were, there are other private property rights stops that would prohibit that. We hopefully would never get to Mr. Canella having to be the bad guy, the referee in that.
Okay.
Borden?
Yes.
If I may,
Sure.
can I call on our city attorney, Mr. Wayne Moore, to state for the record his legal opinion about
Anything about the title, but I will tell you that they cannot violate other people's property rights. No matter what you do tonight, you can't authorize them to violate anybody else's property rights. Whatever easements are on the property, their title will show that. And I will promise you, no title company is going to guarantee it, and no bank's going to loan money on it if there's a problem encroaching on easements or encroaching on somebody else's property.
Thank you for that, Wayne.
I'm good.
Okay? Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Tan? Okay, Tim, thank you.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Want to ask him another question? Oh, sure.
So there was talk about the parking spaces.
Sure.
What determines the number of parking spaces? Is it used, like, for example, if there was a medical
Right.
facility would be more parking spaces
So,
required?
sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. But you're right. Parking is determined by use, and obviously, some uses would warrant more parking requirements than others. I can tell you that this one, I'm not gonna, I won't do a math night for you unless you want me to, but the requirement would be one spot for 50 to 100 units. You could go on the 50-unit side of that or the 100-unit side of that. Then, of course, there's parking requirements per staffing. And for either one of those scenarios, whether we required one spot per 50 units or one spot for 10 units, with the amount of units proposed and the staffing, the application does exceed the parking requirements for either scenario.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Mr. Russo, Sal?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Salvatore Russo, live at 25 Ferguson Street. I'm Joe's older brother. But anyway, I just want to say we purchased this property about 20 years ago, paying taxes. We've looked at other things. At one point, we were going to move the restaurant over, but the economy and just things didn't line up the way they were. We have had some other inquiries, but nothing that has gone as far as we are now. So I don't want to sound redundant or whatever, but just to let you know that we would appreciate it if y'all would approve this. This is a great city. We think this will be an asset to the community. Not only will it raise revenue on this particular property, but it will raise the values on adjoining properties. And we could all use some more money, I think. But anyway, I thank you for your time and your service, and with that, I would appreciate y'all's approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Sal. Ms. Bonnie?
It's not much need really for me to speak on this now because Libby did a pretty good job, but.
Bonnie, can you put the mic down?
Okay. One thing, when we were reviewing this, one thing came to my mind. We had an application on this sometime pre-2004, come before the Planning Commission. And it hit me that night. It was several things that were red flags on this property. Mr. Coyotes purchased it in 1987, and he used this front piece, which is prime real estate, of course. I think anybody that looks at it would think one of the few parcels that's not been developed on that road, on that end. We had an application come forward, and I thought that night when we were listening to the presentation, I couldn't remember exactly who it was, couldn't remember exactly the details of it, but I know that it did not fly because of some conditions that were on that property. So I checked with a former planner. The former planner informed me that they also recalled it, and it had a larger easement for the sewer because he ran the sewer back to the townhomes that he developed on the back portion. And my concern is somewhat about the conditions of the easements, but I'm also puzzled. I mean, he held it for 17 years and didn't do anything. He was a developer. He held it for that long, didn't do anything with that front piece. Kind of made me a little suspicious. And of course, the present owners have owned it for
about 17, and it's nothing been done with it. So my encouragement is, when we reviewed it, we had no mention of anything, any of these easements and things, and we could not see the plat very clearly. So that's what kind of made me do a little bit of research on the back of it. I would say to be very careful because of that, and of course, Mr. Moore is exactly right. And I know that is what he's given you, that knowledge is certainly the truth. But, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of protection of the people who are in those townhomes. I certainly wouldn't want anything to be jeopardized with their sewer and the maintenance of that. And it is a wide area there. I think it's 15 feet ingress and egress, and it says "and utilities." I think drainage utilities. I was a little concerned about that. Normally, in presentations in the past, we have had a little more detail on it, and it was difficult to see. I'm not opposed to developing it. I'd like to have seen it out here across the street, because that's a better place for it on the city-owned property, really. It would have been more for that size building. The building is I call it a maxi storage because it is. It's not a mini storage. It's quite a big building there when you think of it. And I'm not opposed to it. I'd like to see something on that lot. I said that night. I would like to see something on it. I think it's a little large for that particular parcel. And it may be that they get in there and they do find they have some problems. I hope not, but if they do, I mean, I would have suggested that you postpone it and do a little research on it. I think it may, and research what was the application that was submitted. I can't remember who it was, and the planner couldn't, but we both agreed that we did remember it. And it was probably when Mr. Hollingsworth was here as the planner. But it was something about it that prohibited, and I don't know whether it was financially prohibited. Mr. Trant did a great job in expressing and telling you about it, informing you of it. I did ask him, was there any room for a little bit of give on their take as to size, because I do think it is a large building for that small, really small acreage. So, and I know I'm well versed in the comprehensive plan. I've seen a few. It is a guide. I realize that. It's not something, it's not a Bible that you have to go by. It's a guide. I'm very keenly aware of that. But I think it's wise to, I was a little surprised at the Architectural Review Board that they passed it, but I think it's wise to consider the comments that have been made here tonight before you decide to vote for it. I think you should consider it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie. Mr. Graham, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you'd like to say? I'd certainly like to hear from you since you're the...
Sure. Hi, my name is Whitney Graham. I'm with Graham Real Estate, 1904 Twin Cove Road, Virginia Beach. So when I first put the property under contract, and it has been I've had it under contract for quite a while. It's probably February that I put it under contract. We had the title search done, and Kyle Corte, my attorney, who handles the transaction side, Mr. Trant's handling the land use side. He reviewed the title, and we have a title commitment, and so if my memory is correct, there is an easement, but it's to the right of the property. There's a strip. You can see a strip there that is actually, if I could walk up, but you'll see there's two parcels right here, and then there's, if you move up to, there's that strip right there. I believe that is the sewer easement that goes to the apartments behind there, and that is, for the benefit of that property. I would not be here today if there was an easement in the middle of that property, because even if you rezone it tonight and there's an easement in the middle of it, I'm not going to be building on it because I can't get a loan. I can't build. Like, you did a great job explaining how an easement works.
Been doing it 55 years, I know.
You know a little bit about it. He's exactly right. So, you know, there's not an easement in the middle of the property.
Mr. Graham, is it fair to say that your attorney, if there was an easement, he would not propose you moving forward with making the offer on the property?
That is exactly right. And I've spent a lot of money since, you know, we had title work done and got a title commitment. Spent a great deal of money to get to this point, and I'm not really keen on throwing money out the window.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Graham. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will let you speak again. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And I appreciate what Mr. Graham has said, and I'm going to give these two documents to Wayne because I think it would be important.
I'm not going to look at those documents and give a legal opinion.
No,
My opinion doesn't mean anything to what these gentlemen do or
Okay.
what city council does. As I
Well,
said, they cannot change the legality and the ownership of that title, no matter what they do tonight.
Okay. Well, what I would just like to address you back to is the plat that on top of it says fraud to APIF. And I believe, and I could be wrong, and I am not a title examiner, but I believe that this red piece that you see is actually the piece that you're looking at that's 18.8 foot wide by the depth that is adjacent to the post office, and that is the strip, and that is not the strip that the easements are on. So I'm not sure about your title examiner and what they've discovered or how they've discovered it, and I could be wrong. But by looking at that and looking at this plat and looking at the plat that Mr. Russo got when he got it, it clearly shows that there is a 15-foot easement that is approximately, I would say at least 35 feet to 40 feet from the right-hand side of the property line. And that's what this plat indicates. I'm not, I didn't make this up. These are plats that were put to record, one of them in 1998 and the other one in 2004 when Mr. Russo bought it. So I would encourage you, I think that it warrants a little bit more investigation before this council votes on this. This, as I said, is a massive building, as Bonnie said. It's a maxi building. There are a lot of places in Poquoson. We have an EDA that works with this type of businesses that want to locate here. That's one of the things that EDA does, trying to get businesses into the area, normally in the areas that they've designated for this type of structure. And again, I think this structure is more in keeping with an industrial look, and I don't believe the city of Poquoson residents are going to appreciate seeing that building sitting there. So I would strongly encourage y'all to do a little bit of investigation. I'm not disputing his title examiner, but I think that anyone can look at these two plats and see that both of them represent that perhaps that is 40 feet off the property, at least 30 to 40 feet from the right property line. So I would just ask that y'all reconsider before you vote and let citizens also speak, since this is not a by right proposition here. This is a use permit that they are requesting, and I just don't think that the building is appropriate for that particular spot. I think there are areas in Poquoson that are better suited. I think it's a better suited building that is off the highway where it's not up in your face, like some that I've showed you earlier. So I would just strongly ask you to please postpone your vote, do a little bit more investigation, study these plats, have the planning department take a look at these plats and make some determinations of their own as well. So with that, I'll thank y'all for your time.
Thank you, Libby. Okay, any other questions of anybody?
When was the last time a new building, commercial building was built in Poquoson?
I'm going off memory that may not be all that distant, Councilman Fye. I would imagine that it would have been the Cool Wave Car Wash was probably the most recently built commercial building in the city, but that's speculation, and I've not done any professional research on
Wouldn't it
that
be the
tonight.
CVS?
What's that?
Wouldn't it be the CVS?
CVS is
Yeah.
new,
I was gonna say, well, CVS merely replaced another building.
it's certainly larger, but
And
Way larger.
just like,
from
really.
a vacant parcel, I would say the car wash, but new building, definitely CVS.
you know, the Wendy's, but it too replaced another building that was
Right.
roughly the same size.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Is there a motion? I'm sorry, close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution to approve a conditional permit for the operation of a mini storage warehouse to be located in tax map parcels 18-1-103 and 18-1-104, Wood Creek Road, Zone B2, Business Commercial.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded, we adopt the resolutions. Any other questions, concerns, comments?
This is our time for comments, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I haven't talked to anybody on council. I have no idea how anybody's voting tonight, which is how I like it, because I think this is where the discussion should be, and not before we get here. So I just had a couple things I wanted to say, because we did have some citizens speak, and I don't like just voting and giving a yes or a no, and then nobody knowing why. Yes or no, and this seems to be a really important issue to people. As far as the easement issues, that's not our job. It's clearly not our job to determine whether there's easements or not. The title company is going to determine that. They're either going to get a loan or they're not. It's going to go before our city staff, who I trust would stop it at that point. Wouldn't even get there. So I think the easement issue is a non-issue. The parking places, along with the number of stories and the way the building's built, completely complies with our ordinances. The only issue is whether, really, in my view, we're supposed to determine is if we want to allow a storage unit, not a use that's normally allowed or not. That's really what's under consideration for us and planning, really. But to Ms. Moffitt and Ms. Grable, I, as a citizen outside of council, completely agree with every single thing that you said tonight. I've been on that side of the podium for the exact same reasons for other things in this city. If I had my way, the CVS wouldn't be there. I think that building is big. It doesn't fit with the small town feel. I don't think the car wash does either, personally. I think the big disconnect that we've had in this city for a very long time is that we've got this really great comprehensive plan that lays out, and we got lots of citizen input on what citizens want this city to look like. The big disconnect, in my personal opinion, that we've always had is between the comprehensive plan and our ordinances and what's allowed. And that's the job of the Planning Commission, who has the power to change those ordinances, write new ones, send them to us to vote, and change those. Personally, I don't think that Poquoson should allow anything above a two-story building. I think our ordinances should be changed so that that's not allowed, and then we don't have to worry about having this issue. You know, we allowed Legacy to build four-story apartments and get an exception, which I wasn't on council then, and I didn't vote for that, and I wouldn't have voted for that, because I think 4 stories right on Victory Boulevard is not going to look good. So I think, and tonight was the night for citizens to speak. And we've also had this same issue before in the past where citizens, and I agree with your statement, I think there are a lot of citizens that would not be happy with that building, the way it looks, the number of stories. But the issue is that those are all allowed by our ordinances. And if we want a small town feel, I was recently in Williamsburg and I drove by a Walmart. I didn't even know it was a Walmart. It was the most beautiful Walmart I've ever seen, because they have these amazing architectural standards that do that. And I think we need those. And I think we need our ordinances to align with our comprehensive plan. Unfortunately, they do not. And I tried to get the ordinances changed to not allow buildings over a certain square footage after we had the big Walmart issue, because I knew CVS was coming down the road when I was a citizen. And, got no traction on that. So I agree with you guys that I would love to see our entryway there be the small town feel and look like some of these cities in Williamsburg and Richmond where all the architectural standards are the exact same. I absolutely would love that. But then we need to change our ordinances so that the car washes and the CVSs and the storage units cannot go in there. So that kind of is what I want
Okay.
tonight before
Okay.
I vote.
All right.
Kind of echoing, Tim, I agree with everything you said, and then when you brought up the parts about the, if it was, I used to use the example of a pet store, but we got one now, so I use the example of a toy store. If it was a toy store, this was a toy store, they wouldn't be here right now. They probably have started groundbreaking or ribbon cutting by now. So I, of course, as I do most things, positives and negatives. The positives, warehouse will be located what we call the With Creek Road Corridor for the comp plan. It'll provide a tax revenue. It may be of use by Poquoson citizens, especially newer ones that are probably living right over here in a few years. It should attract out-of-town consumers, though not likely necessarily recruiting ones, but they will come into the city, unlike where the Walmart was going to go. They'll come into the city, they'll hit the intersection, they'll hang a left, or they'll come from the south side and they'll go through the intersection and they'll basically see the entire business community of Poquoson in that one little turn in. And there may be something that catches their attention. It may be go to Anna's for lunch, you know. Luckily, hopefully it's like that. So it will not be a traffic burden on With Creek Road. As far as the negatives, it really doesn't fully comply with the comprehensive plan. I look at this, read through it over and over, and see like that. And there's several citizens' requests to deny the conditional use permit. However, we have individuals that own the property that are basically what people come to Poquoson for lunch, for dinner, that own a very nice restaurant that many, many times, and supporting them along the same line. So I'm with you. I still don't know how I'm going to vote until Kim calls my name.
We're going to find out in just a
Yeah,
second.
exactly. So, you know, all that's out there. So that's all I got.
David, you have something?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, just for the record, a reminder, this conditional use permit was advertised in advance by law.
Well, that was one of my points too, David, is that tonight is the night where citizens have the opportunity to come speak. And we've had this same thing happen with Legacy, where citizens sort of found out at the last minute. And I feel for citizens on that too, because I've also been on the other side of that. And, you know, it's not feasible when people have kids and jobs and everything to look at the agenda every 2 weeks and see, oh, what's city council going to talk about? I get it. I didn't pay attention lots of times when I was a citizen either. Citizens just don't do that because they have lives. But this is the process. And this is the night where if citizens really did not want this, this was their opportunity to come speak.
We had 9 citizens come and speak.
Which is more than we ever have.
Right.
Okay. Ms. Kim?
Councilwoman Andrews?
It's been so long since you read the motion was to.
Approve.
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman? Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, thanks, Kim. Let's move on to new business. First item is a resolution adopting the 2022 Radiological Emergency Response Plan, Ingestion Exposure Pathways. Chief Bryant? How you doing, Michael? Good, good.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Ms. O'Connell, thank you for having me this evening. Tonight, we have another plan to bring to y'all. FEMA enacted the changes to the radiological emergency program for jurisdictions residing within a 50-mile
50 miles of the nuclear power plant, which in our case would be Surrey. Now, there's two bullets here that pretty much talks about this. This plan will enhance our radiological plan with protective actions and procedures. And the big part of it is, all jurisdictions must participate in the state evaluated drill every 8 years. So this is FEMA. The state of Virginia, Commonwealth of Virginia, decided they wanted to go with the FEMA program. So we do have a radiological plan that we have had for many years. This is going to enhance that plan. So that's pretty much what it is.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any questions of Mike? That's pretty simple to me.
When was the last time we had?
Last year, actually.
Last year.
That was a state drill.
Oh, okay.
This is FEMA, so every 8 years we'll have another drill.
Okay, good.
All right, is there a motion for the resolution?
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution
Okay.
that would pass the radiological emergency response plan ingestion exposure pathways.
Okay.
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt the resolution. Are there concerns, comments before we take a vote? If not, Ms. Kemp?
Aye.
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel? Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thanks, Kim. Item 2 under new business, a resolution concurring with the York County Board of Supervisors, also authorizing the county attorney to petition the circuit court pursuant to Code of Virginia 24.2-228.1B to refrain from ordering a special election by virtue of retirement and resignation of York Poquoson Sheriff J.D. Danny Diggs, and to approve Major Ronald Montgomery to serve as sheriff for the remainder of his term. We ought to walk right on through that, folks. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution concurring with the York County Board of Supervisors, authorizing the county attorney to petition the circuit court pursuant to Code of Virginia 24.2-222.1B to refrain from ordering a special election by virtue of retirement, resignation of York Poquoson Sheriff J.D. Danny Diggs, and Major Ronald Montgomery to serve as sheriff for the remainder of the term.
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt that resolution. Are there any concerns, comments? Any concerns at all? If not, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel? Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Item 3 is a resolution making an appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Someone have a name?
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making an appointment to the Board of Zoning Appeals with the following name inserted, Micah Miller as an alternate. His term will expire August 31st, 2020.
All right, thanks, buddy. There's a second?
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt the resolution with that name inserted. Concerns, comments?
I think it's an excellent choice, sir.
I'm sorry?
I think it's an excellent choice.
Oh, okay. All right, Ms. Kim?
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman? Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews? Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Kim. Last item on the new business is a resolution making an appointment to the Planning Commission.
Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution making an appointment to the Planning Commission, with the following name inserted, and I hope I pronounce his last name correctly, Stephen Geisinger.
Yes.
Hot dog. From the Central Precinct, whose term will expire November 30th, 2026, and that we also postpone the second appointment for the Central Precinct.
Okay? All right.
Second.
All right, motion made second, we adopt the resolution with that name inserted. Any concerns, comments? Any questions? Ms. Kim, please.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews? Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilman Fye?
Aye.
Councilman Hucks?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel? Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0. Yes. Currently, we have one unexpired vacant board seat for the Western Precinct for the school board. This item will be on the agenda at the January 23rd meeting. If any citizen is interested in holding a seat on the school board or any other board, please go to our website, go to Boards and Commissions, and fill out a board bank application. The deadline for the application submitted for the seat of the school board will be due no later than January 9th. You can submit electronically, or you may turn in to my office in the city manager's office. If you have any questions, you can give us a call in the city manager's office at 757-868-3000. We're also taking applications for a central vacancy on the Planning Commission. If you would like to be considered for this position, please turn your application into our office as soon as possible. And that's all I've got.
And the interviews for the school board seat on the 23rd of week.
All right, thanks, Kim. Tanya, has your comments?
Absolutely. First of all, last month, I want to thank you for making the appropriation to increase the public safety salary. That was well taken by both police and fire, as well as the $2,000 retention award. We have issued that payroll and will be handing that payment out to employees this week. So thank you for that. Also like to thank Mr. Cannella and Mr. Horton for the job on the conditional use permit. A lot of efforts has gone into those, both for the ambulance service as well as for the mini storage, so I thank them for that time taking it. Also like to thank Councilman Green for his years of service. It's a great honor to be up at the dais at the last meeting for Mr. Green, so thank you, and I want to thank him for, putting up with me for that 5 years that he saw for me. Also, I wanted to announce that effective on Friday, the police department has placed all 4 school resource offices in location. So if you recall, back early July, you appropriated for the 4th. We have filled that position, so we are proud to say that each school is protected by a police officer at this point. So thank you for providing those resources. I'd also like to thank all city employees for the continued commitment and their service and dedication to the city. It takes a lot to continue to operate the city, so I thank you. And then I wish everybody a safe and Merry Christmas and a great start to 2023.
Thank you, ma'am. David?
Thank you, Gordon. I have no comments.
Okay, buddy?
I'd like to remind everybody that the mobile food pantry will be December the 20th. That's Tuesday, from 10 to 1 at the Parks and Recreation Building, and it'll be hosted by the St. Timothy Presbyterian Church.
Great, great. Keith?
Yes, I'd like to apologize because I don't think we thanked enough at all at our last meeting, the Parks and Rec for the Seafood Festival. They did an amazing job. I mean, after 3 years of not having it, I think they did a great job. Some things were forgotten, some things were added, so overall it was a beautiful event and great weather to boot. And I think I kind of slighted them because I kind of feel partial to Parks and Rec after all those years on their advisory board, that they did a great job, and thanks to Dave Callis and Gretchen and Taylor and, I'm going to forget the name, but they all did a great job. I mean, Superfest was fantastic this year.
Okay, thank you. Kerry?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the, as well as Seafood Festival Steve mentioned, but the parade and the Christmas tree lighting just seemed to get bigger and bigger each year. And was at the Christmas tree lighting and the Frosty Festival out here just a few days ago. And there was at least 5 times the people that used to be here when I'd take my granddaughter to sing in the middle school course. At least 5 times as many. So that is really a growing event. I've just figured up, I've been on council with you about 17 years, buddy, and we're going to miss you. And just wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
I agree with everything everybody said. I noticed too that last time I meant to say something about the Seafood Fest because it was so good, and having all these community events, they're just all really great and I enjoy them so much. And we are going to miss you, buddy. It's been great serving with you. And we have to decide who's going to take over the food pantry announcement. since you won't be here to do this, we need to make sure we keep doing those every week.
I hope it's not like what I tell a lot of people. I'm gonna miss you like I hope you'll miss me a little bit more than that.
Well, we don't have to practice reading resolutions.
We will. And two, I encourage people to apply for our school board position and our planning commission. And I also wanted to just say again, because I know the citizens are going to be watching this, and I know for certain there's going to be a lot of people that are not happy about that storage building. And, you know, as I said before, it, you know, wouldn't be probably my personal choice of what went there. I would too like it to be across from City Hall too, but then it would probably have to be triple the size in order to be able to build or that piece of land. Then we'd have a storage building that was triple that size. So I would encourage citizens, I totally agree with our comprehensive plan, and encourage citizens to call our planning commission and encourage them to start changing our ordinances to match our comprehensive plan if we want our city to look like our comprehensive plan. That's really important. And wanted to thank everybody who did come out and speak tonight, because even if we don't vote in agreement to what people talked about, it's important that everybody gets to speak, everybody gets their opinion heard, and I do really appreciate people coming out and voicing their opinion on the matters that.
Bud?
Yes, first off, I want to say I'm going to miss Buddy Green also. I don't know who I'm going to give my candy to anymore, okay? And I sincerely hope, I sincerely hope in the near future, okay, in the middle of a development somewhere, we'll be able to build a traffic circle so we can name it the Buddy Green Traffic Circle. And
We'll make it go counterclockwise.
I would also like to congratulate our city employees on their awards for their time and service, and thank the citizens of Poquoson for paying attention to the city government. I wish every citizen would, okay? It's very important, okay? I second Janice's comments about please apply for the various commissions and boards for the city. This is the nicest city in the state of Virginia to live, probably the United States. If you want to keep it that way, you need to help keep it that way by working and supporting the various boards, okay? Those of us here now can't be here forever, and nor should we be, okay? We need some fresh blood from people who have stake in this city and want to keep it this way. When we were having the debate relative to the storage facility, and Jana made her comments, I wrote a little note on her pad over here that said, thank you for your comments, because she's exactly right. And Councilman Five made some comments, and if you go to Williamsburg and you look at the 7-Eleven in Williamsburg, it doesn't look like the rest of the 7-Elevens anywhere in the state of Virginia, okay? And that comprehensive plan says the way we'd like for Poquoson to look, okay? And it's not like the storage building we just voted on, but we have a different set of criteria. And Jana's right on those comments right off the bat. And so I encourage the Planning Commission to look at that, and maybe we need to look at our ordinances and change them to reflect something that's similar to the comprehensive plan. So with that, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, or a Happy Holiday, however you support it, and wish you the best.
Thank you, Bud. Before we adjourn, Mr. Green, come at the podium. And Mrs. Green as well.
Nobody's got a gun, do they?
Now, you can't get away. Can I close this? We're all gonna miss you, buddy. We really are. We really are gonna miss you. The city's gonna miss you. Buddy stands here with me tonight. Very humble man, I know that. Always involved, never asking for credit regarding the many good deeds that he has been associated with over many years of service to the citizens who reside here. Buddy served the city of Poquoson for over 26 years. That in and of itself is a tremendous accomplishment, but it doesn't stop there. From one giant step forward to another, this building we're assembled in bears Buddy's name on the dedication plaque, hangs in the hallway just beyond these chambers. Primary school, you'll find his name there as well. 2 fire stations. You'll find his name there as well. The additions to the high school, the elementary and middle schools. If that's not enough, his name will appear on the dedication plaque that will be located in the new public safety building. But more than plaques and 26 years of service, Buddy has been an intent listener to the citizens of this community. If more governments, local, state, and federal, would do as Buddy has done over his tenure on city council, and that is to listen to those that we serve, this country would be far in better shape. I would be remiss if I did not comment about Buddy's generosity. Buddy also donates his city council salary to those who have fallen on hard times within our community. Buddy, through his generosity, has paid many water bills, Virginia power bills. He's done that to keep services from being disconnected from these citizens. Buddy, along with his wife Pat, have also coordinated the community food bag distribution every month for the past 10 years. If I were to continue with more deserved accolades, we'd be here all night. Buddy Green's devotion to the city of Poquoson and those who call Poquoson home has been exceptional, to say the least. His character is above reproach, and his integrity is more than stellar. There is no plaque that can say how much this city will miss Buddy Green and his many acts of kindness and his devotion to the city government. Should anyone doubt any comments I've made here tonight, I would encourage you to stop for just a moment, consider where you live, and then compare our city to any other around us. And I believe that you will come to the same conclusion I have, that Poquoson is the place, to large thanks to Buddy Green. Buddy, let me say from a personal perspective, I will miss you tremendously. Your advice, your constant communication with me regarding many issues we face as a council has just been invaluable. Over your many years of service to this community, you have brought great credit, not only on yourself, but also to this entire community. On behalf of city government, Buddy, city staff, and on behalf of the citizens that we serve, well done, my friend. We pray God will continually bless you and your family, and we pray that the wind will always be at your back. And with that said, on behalf of council, I'd like to present you with this, Buddy. I'd like to read it. Presented to Herbert R. Buddy Green, in grateful appreciation of your many years of outstanding service to the city council for the city of Poquoson from January 1996 to December 2007, and January 2010, December 2022.
Thank you.
And I'll let you, if you want to.
Well, I hope one day I can live up to all these things that have been said about me, because I'm certainly not there yet. But yeah, it's with a great deal of pride and honor that the citizens of Poquoson have chosen to elect me, and I hope that I have served them well, because I love this city, and I tell you, we have got the best staff in the whole wide world, and I just thank you very much. My daddy put that handle on me. That's nothing to say about that, it's awful.
Like I'm in a Hallmark movie.
Mr. Green's one of your last acts. We need to adjourn, sir.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion made and second to adjourn. Ms. Kim?
Councilman Fox? Aye. Councilman Fine?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Councilwoman Andrews?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
Aye.
Mayor Hessel?
Aye.
Councilman Green?
Reluctantly, aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 7-0.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Well done.
Appreciate it.
Just mentioned the black that's going in the storage
I'm sorry, you're right.